The governor called you guys back very short notice to deal with pension reform. At the end of the year, it didn't get done. In about 24 hours, you guys were back in town. Tell me about that special session, kind of what went down and what it means for pensions moving forward.
Well, I certainly understand where the governor was coming from, and it had been rumored for a week or two that may occur depending on the court decision. But yet at the same time, anytime you come back for a special session, you pretty much have to have an agreement in place before you get here if you're going to get it done in a timely manner. And those discussions beforehand really never came to a consensus. There was progress probably made on those discussions, so I can understand where he thought we might could get that consensus, but it was clear after we got here, spent the first day, looked at the actual proposal that the administration brought forward, that it was going to be very unlikely that we could get to a consensus in a timely manner, especially with the holidays coming up, and we didn't feel the need to spend any more taxpayer money, so obviously we decided to sine die and bring that issue back up as we move forward, and I'm sure you'll hear a lot about it as we start next week.
So you do think it'll happen in 2019?
Well, I didn't say that. I'm sure there'll be a lot of discussions during this 30-day session. One thing we're not going to allow to happen is we're not going to allow it to overshadow everything else that needs to be done. There's other things that need to be done that are high priorities for the citizens of the Commonwealth. And again, there's 4.4 million Kentuckians, and we have a responsibility to all of them. And we're not going to allow pensions, which is a major issue. We know that, we acknowledge that. But we're not going to let it take precedent over everything else that needs to be done. It's not going to steal the thunder from everything else. We will have discussions. We have a large number of new members coming in, so we'll have to get together and get some kind of consensus on what that is. We have members who want to go back to original Senate Bill 151. We have members who want to go further. We have some members who want to just continue to try to fund it and let it go, and so we have to get a consensus on that first. So we'll have discussions and see where we're at, but I certainly don't want to raise anybody's expectations that it is done in this 30-day session.
Now, another huge issue that happened in 2018 was tax reform. And moving into the next year, I know there are some tweaks that you guys want to make to the tax reform package that you passed, and possibly some other changes. What do you think about tax reform in this upcoming session? I know some people have said just the small tweaks, but do you think you start to lose momentum if you guys don't continue to start making those reforms to make the system more competitive like you've been talking about?
Well, I don't think we'll lose momentum. I think our first priority is to do what we're phrasing as a tax cleanup. Certainly a lot of that's around the nonprofits, which Speaker Osmond already has a bill filed on that. So I think our first priority is going to be to make sure we get that right and get the cleanup bill done the way that we need to do. And I think you'll see continued discussions on overall tax reform, but again, in the 30-day session, that's such a broad topic that I think you'll see a lot of the groundwork laid to lead us into the interim, possibly with the possibility of the next major step being in the 60-day long session.
Now, moving into the 2019 session, you're now in a new leadership role. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you very much.
So, what are some of the priorities that the Republican caucus expects to take up in 2019? Obviously, you said you don't want pensions and some of these bigger, huge problems to overshadow other things. So what are the things you guys want to tackle the most in 2019?
Well, school safety is a big one. We spent a year with a working group, working with the Senate, touring the state, having working meetings. We've heard from education professionals, we've heard from mental health professionals, law enforcement, parents, students. Senator Wise and I and the working group has, like I said, traveled the state, got great feedback on that. So, we value the safety of our students to be of utmost importance. And I think that's something that both parties can get behind. And so I think that's something we're really going to get out, try to do early, and try to bring some bipartisan support behind that issue. So school safety is going to be a major one. And it's been vetted a lot. Like I said, we spent a lot of time over here in the last year. And then we're going to look at welfare reform. I think welfare reform is a major issue. Our workforce participation rate in Kentucky right now is about 59%. We've done a great job the last 2 years, I think, promoting economic growth. The numbers show it. Record investments, record job growth. I think today you just heard, good news that for the first time since 2000, there's no county in Kentucky with an unemployment rate higher than 10%. So we want to continue to build on that climate that we've created about job growth, job creation, and a big part of that, I think, is the workforce participation rate. And again, it's at 59% right now, and a big reason why is some of the welfare abuse systems. So personally, we feel like welfare reform is needed to kind of help grow the workforce in Kentucky, because we cannot sustain that growth without improving the workforce. So that's going to be a huge one. Obviously, we've got some things we want to do around the child welfare system, continuing maybe to do some things with House Bill 1 of last year, which Pro Tem Meade led so much on, and we want to look at that some more. We want to look at the opioid issue. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of bills around that. It's such an epidemic in Kentucky, so we want to do everything we can to assist our local communities, our faith-based communities, in combating that issue. And then obviously, like I said earlier, the tax cleanup bill. So those are probably 4 big priorities for us.
So now welfare, that's something I've heard a little bit of discussion on, but what can the state do with welfare reform? Obviously a lot of welfare programs are at the federal level. I know unemployment insurance is something that's been talked about, but that may not even be in the scope of what you're talking about. So when you say welfare reform, what are you guys kind of looking at?
Well, I think we're looking at one, again, is about trying to make sure every able-bodied person, just like in the healthcare system, is out working or doing all they can to work. We want to give a hand up, not a hand out, and try to work with the system to make it that kind of a system. We don't want to be viewed as the party who doesn't want to help anybody. We do, and we want to help anybody that's truly in need. But at the same time, there's people in Kentucky who are more than capable of going out to work, and there's jobs everywhere. And part of that, like you said, a lot of that is tied to the Fed, so we'll have to be really creative on how we approach that. And I think that's something you'll see probably approach more in February as we looked at a lot of the options that are out there.
And that kind of leads into my next question. In the last couple of years where you guys have been in the majority, especially the first year, a huge first week of passing legislation, at least getting the ball rolling, where in the past it's been, leadership teams weren't even elected by then. So do you guys expect to introduce or pass anything in that first week? Any big pushes in that first week?
You wouldn't want me to run any surprises for anybody, would you?
No, of course not.
We'll just have to leave that one out there.
Okay. So now let's talk a little bit more about your new leadership role. When you were running for this position, what were you kind of campaigning on within your caucus, and what did you hear from caucus members about what were the most important things to them that they really want to see addressed, and that your leadership would help get that done?
Well, what I just told members was that I would be available to listen to their concerns. I would not be afraid to stand out front, and I feel like I've proven that on some tough issues, to take the heat and try to protect them, particularly our new members coming in. So that was a big thing, and again, put them in positions of their strength. I kind of used a coaching analogy. I used to coach before I came here, and I think anytime you're putting a team together, you've got to find, you put people in positions where they can succeed. And that's one thing I talk to them about, is finding areas where give them the best opportunity to succeed. So, and that's really what I try to stress, and I think they appreciated that. Didn't promise anybody anything other than just working hard and protecting them and trying to make sure they were in positions to succeed. And I think obviously we're grateful for the outcome of the election and looking forward to this opportunity, realizing that we've got a learning curve here, that it's going to take a while, but we're surrounded by some good people, and I think we'll get it done.
So we have talked a little bit about how this is a short session, and not as much may not get done, but also you talked about the elections. There's a lot of new members coming into the General Assembly. So do you expect any kind of new dynamics, or any different kinds of priorities based on the new membership that you have?
Well, our new membership are outstanding folks. I've got to meet basically all of them out either during the elections or at retreat, and they come from great backgrounds. Most of them come from rural parts of the state, so I think there is a little bit of a dynamic there where the caucus has probably become a little more rural in that sense. But they all bring different talents to the caucus, and again, a lot of them sometimes sit back and think, they've made the comment, well, we need to just sit back and kind of learn, and that's very important, but I've encouraged them too. I said, you were elected by your constituents, so don't be afraid to come up here and bring your ideas and go to work too. There's only 138 members of the General Assembly, and it's a great honor for all of us. And again, the people from their districts trusted them enough to send them here. So again, while a lot of them talk about just learning, et cetera, I've been encouraging them to not be afraid to step out though, and be bold and bring your ideas to the caucus, and because they all bring expertise from different areas, and and it's really a diverse group. You know, we've got several new folks from West Kentucky who bring in a lot of interest from, you know, down around the lakes area and stuff, around tourism and stuff. And then, so it's going to be neat for them to find their niche. We've got some educators that are coming in who are obviously we're going to have to work with them to see how we can come together on education reform, because obviously the caucus has proven that we believe we need to do some education reform. So we'll have to see kind of where they're at on that, but we'll all get together and make the best decisions for Kentucky.
Now, just to follow up on that, what kind of education reforms are you guys thinking about? Obviously, outside of pensions, there are other education issues that have been talked about in years past, tribunal reform, tenure reform. So what are you kind of thinking in terms of when you say education reform?
Well, I think we'll certainly have discussions around both of those about tribunal reform. I know Senator Schickel's bringing back his site-based decision bill. I think it's going to look a little different this time. So I feel like the Senate's going to probably pass both of those, and we'll certainly look at those when they come this way, or maybe somebody will file them in the House, but those are certainly two of them. I certainly expect us to have a very good, serious dialogue about scholarship tax credits. Again, I think we've proven that while we want to support our public schools, you know, we basically did not fund charter school funding last budget session because we committed to restoring funding as much as possible to traditional schools. But at the same time, we have a record that we do believe in school choice, and so I think there's going to be serious discussion on scholarship tax credit. The department has made it clear that they want to look at charter funding. I really don't know how far that was going to get in this session. It's probably more of a 2019 session, but I'm sure that discussion will be out there at least. So some major education reform topics will be discussed. Again, whether or not we can get them across the finish line, I think it's too early to tell.
Now, a major issue that was discussed in 2018 but didn't reach that finish line, and is a huge priority of the business community and a lot of others in a coalition, is infrastructure funding. The possibility of, you know, making changes to the gas tax or fees, just the formula in general, to make sure we have enough money for our roads and bridges. Obviously, it is a 30-day session with a lot of new members, so what do you think about the prospects of getting transportation funding done in 2019?
Well, again, basically, the difficulty there again is the vote total. When you're in a non-budget year, you got to have the 60 votes, and of course, the governor's on record of kind of what he wants there. I think the General Assembly, by and large, acknowledges that we have to do something about infrastructure funding, that we are falling behind with infrastructure in the Commonwealth. I think the devil is in the details about whether or not we look at different methods, different mechanisms about how we get there. And I think you'll see a lot of this discussion this session around what are alternative possibilities out there. What are we missing maybe that other states are doing? But I certainly think it's possible that it happens this session. But again, knowing the restraints of a 30-day session, it may be an issue that falls toward 2019 more. But I certainly don't want to take it off the table as a possibility of the session, because again, I'm very confident that the General Assembly, by and large, knows the needs of our infrastructure deficits in Kentucky, and that we have to do something.
Now, there's one other little thing happening in 2019, the governor's race.
Really?
Yeah, just a teeny tiny thing happening. So what do you think that's going to mean for the 2019 session? Obviously, the dynamics are probably going to be kind of interesting with people running on certain issues and then you guys trying to pass stuff. So what do you think the governor's race will mean for the 2019 session?
Well, obviously, that could mean a lot of different things, depending on who all ends up getting in the race, which we'll know here in about 3 weeks. I'm going to try my best to keep the General Assembly, one of the 3 branches of government, focused on the task at hand of doing the people's business, and try not to get caught up so much into that governor's race. Now, we all know that will factor into things, but the reality is this: we're going to put the people of Kentucky first. The House Republican Caucus is. We're not going to get, like I said, we're not going to get bogged down with pension debate the whole session. We're not going to get bogged down in who's worried about who's running for governor, who's not running for governor. We're going to put the people of Kentucky first, and we're going to focus on issues that will better the lives of Kentuckians, and we'll worry about that and let everything else fall where it falls.
So when I interviewed Governor Bevin, he said he is running, and he said he's still thinking about his running mate. That's not you, is it?
It'd be news to me.
Okay, so any, kind of ideas or predictions about what will happen within the next 3 weeks with that race and Governor Bevin's ticket, or even other Republicans that could get in?
Obviously, on the Republican side, I think everybody's waiting to see what the governor's going to do. He has said he's going to run. You have to take him at his word. Kind of surprised that, a lot of people wonder why he hadn't started doing some fundraising and things yet. So there's still a lot of speculation out there. But again, it's not my place to get into speculation. We'll know on January 25th, I think it is. Right now, we're just focused on trying to lead the Republican House Caucus.
Anything else you want to cover? Anything else you want people to know before 2019?
Well, I just want people to know, again, they can rest assured we're going to be focused on trying to improve their lives, the quality of life for Kentuckians, and we're going to do that in a fair manner. But we also expect, like I said earlier, in terms of welfare reform and other things, that we have to support each other. We're in a Commonwealth that doesn't have a lot of resources. We're doing well in terms of past history with our revenue, but we need people who are able to go out and do things and help themselves to step up. A 59% workforce participation rate will not sustain an economy. You know that as well as I do, coming from the chamber and other things, and we've got to do something about that. And a lot of that will be around education, workforce, but a lot of that also has to be in other types of things, welfare reform and other things. And again, Kentucky's a great place to live and work, but if we truly want to leave a better life for our children and grandchildren, we've got to step up.